What happens when you take one of the deadliest forwards in world football and pair him with one of the game's most gifted young playmakers, then put both under a tactical mind that thinks like a clockmaker? The result is less a partnership and more a new language. Real Madrid's Mbappé-Güler axis isn't just effective, it's surgical. It's the kind of connection that makes defenses feel foolish, coaches feel vindicated, and fans feel that particular kind of awe you only get with repeatable genius. This season, Xabi Alonso didn't inherit a team. He inherited a machine with missing cogs. He hasn't just repaired it, he's redesigned it. He asked a simple question: can elite instincts be framed inside a rigid, repeatable structure? The answer, when you watch Madrid play now, is yes. And the key to that answer is two players who, for different reasons, arrived with questions over their futures, and who are now providing the answers. Let's begin with Mbappé. Not the headlines, not the shirt numbers, but the tactical shift. You've seen the goals, the speed, the highlights. But what's interesting this season is the medicine behind those goals. Timing, positioning, restraint. Alonso refused to let Mbappé be merely a wing threat. He re-sculpted him into a central predator. The visual is small, but lethal. Instead of hugging the flank and waiting to cut back, Mbappé now starts in the middle third, occupying that no-man's land defenders hate. He is not longer reacting to chaos. He is the chaos architect. This change matters for three reasons. First, it reduces variability. On the wing, success is partly theater, an individual's ability to create a moment. Central positioning forces a player to engage with patterns, how the pivot moves, when the pivot slips, where the half space opens. It demands timing, not just talent. Mbappé's runs have become surgical. He times his acceleration to hit the seam of a two-man block. He reads the drift of a center-back's shoulder. He runs behind the line, not because he's faster, but because he's learned to be there at the split second the pass is possible. That split second, a sliver of time, is everything. Second, the central role converts space into probability. When wingers stretch a defense, central players get cleaner channels. Alonso's system intentionally stretches rival backlines wide, while keeping the middle compact and ready for Mbappé to exploit. The design is deliberate. Create horizontal tension so the vertical seam becomes a highway. Last season, teams defended Mbappé with chaotic doubles and hope. Now they face a chess problem. If they step up, Mbappé runs in behind. If they sit, he receives and finishes. The choice is losing. Third, Mbappé's off-ball discipline has matured. He's not disappearing at random. He is purposefully vacating zones, creating false runners, dragging center-backs out before detonating. The result is that he becomes both the decoy and the striker in the same phase. He fools opponents twice, once with movement that invites them into a trap, and again by finishing the trap he invited them into. It's the kind of duality only elite players can maintain. Now look at Arda Güler. Talent alone doesn't explain his leap, nor does a single tactical tweak. It's the accumulation of trust, environment, and conditioning. Under Ancelotti, Güler was often a cameo, brilliance in pieces, but not the conductor. Alonso handed him a role that demanded patience, understanding, and the intelligence to make quick, right choices under pressure. Güler responded by becoming the team's central metronome. Güler isn't just a passer, he is a read and act engine. He drops to create angles, forms triangles with the pivot and the fullback, and then once the ball clears the first press line, he slides into the half space, the critical pocket where defenders are between triggers. There, he becomes both a decision maker and a mirror for Mbappé's runs. He reads how a defender chooses to mark the space and adjusts his pass type, threaded low, angled lob, or a flat drive. The pre-assist becomes as important as the assist. The pass before the pass, the activity that places bodies in spots where the killer pass becomes inevitable, that's where Güler's craft lives. What's changed physically as well as tactically? Güler's body. Off-season conditioning added muscle and endurance, and that shows. He shields better, he holds contact, he runs the channels late into matches. That physical upgrade turned a talented cameo artist into a full 90-minute conductor. Alonso noticed both the growth and the discipline. He rewarded it with trust and minutes. Minutes become rhythm. Rhythm becomes chemistry. The tactical marriage between the two is what terrifies defenders. Watch a single sequence. Madrid recycles the ball at the edge of the final third. Güler begins to scan. Mbappé drifts slightly to pull a center-back's focus, then a split second later, Mbappé accelerates between center-backs into a seam. Güler's pass arrives at stride. Mbappé meets it without breaking his sprint. That meeting is taught less in training drills and more in repeated trust, the kind that forms when one player knows the other will be exactly where they must be, always. This unpredictability is essential. Teams cannot prepare for a fixed pattern if the pattern can alter mid-possession. 1 minute Mbappé is causing a defender to commit to the shoulder. The next, he drops short to become an outlet, inviting a vertical pass that Güler threads into the now vacant corridor. It's a constant role swap. Creator becomes finisher, finisher becomes decoy, decoy becomes creator. That is the modern evolution of star pairings. It's not who has the ball, it's who creates the preferable configuration of soldiers on the field. Xabi Alonso's role is deceptively simple. Supply a disciplined architecture with flexible nodes. The nodes, Mbappé, Güler, and supporting cast, have freedom bounded by structure. Players can think creatively only when they know their teammates will protect the space they leave. That is the guardrail. If Mbappé sprints in behind, the midfield compresses to cover the gap. If Güler pushes into the pocket, a pivot takes the half space to prevent transition leaks. This is not improvisation without consequence. It is improvisation with insurance, the perfect blend for risk-taking. There's also a psychological element. Both players arrived with narratives attached. Mbappé carried the missing trophy headline, the doubt about whether his peak would arrive on Europe's biggest nights. Güler was labeled a promising youth who lacked the physicality and responsibility to be a dynamic starter. Alonso didn't ignore those narratives, he leveraged them. He gave Mbappé tasks that required less heroic improvisation and more clinical decision-making. He gave Güler freedom that came with accountability. This is how coaches solve modern problems, by reframing a player's weaknesses into role-specific strengths. Tactically, Madrid's pressing structure feeds both players. The high press stifles build-up, forces opponents into errors higher up, and creates immediate transition chances. Mbappé's speed becomes more lethal, with possessions won near the opponent's box. Güler's quick recognition converts those transitional seconds into purposeful passing moves. Put simply, Madrid's ideal state is turnovers in the opponent's half, and the Mbappé-Güler axis is the conversion factory. Let's get granular for a moment. Consider the geometry of their interactions. Güler frequently occupies the half space between opposition midfield and defense. From there, the passing lane to Mbappé is a narrow, almost surgical channel that a standard fullback cannot cover without either shifting center-back responsibilities or leaving a pocket open elsewhere. When that lane opens, Mbappé's run angles are shallow enough to avoid offside traps, while deep enough to create separation at the final moment. The pass timing is sub-second precision. The margin for error is small, but so is the window for defenders to recover. A single misalignment in marking converts to a shot on goal. In this model, scoring is not a single act, but a chain of marginal advantages stacked in sequence. We've also seen the tactical ripple effect across the team. Vinicius's wide threat is no longer the primary focus. His wing play has become complementary rather than central. Bellingham's arrival and role remain crucial, but now his movements are read within the larger choreography. The team's identity becomes less about heroic individualism and more about codependent excellence. The result is a Madrid that looks not merely dominant, but inevitable. There are practical match examples that make the point. In certain Champions League fixtures this season, teams that sat deep suffered because Güler could manipulate half spaces and pry strings between defenders. Teams that pressed high were punished by Mbappé's vertical bursts. It's a tactical catch, 22 for opponents. Press and you risk space behind. Sit and you invite surgical passing sequences. In both choices, Madrid has an answer. Yet greatness rarely comes without friction. Predictability can creep into any system. Opponents adapt, and referees can change the calculus with variables like offside calls or foul thresholds. Mbappé still occasionally misreads a defensive drift and gets caught offside. Güler may attempt a threaded pass that's slightly early and wasted. Those micro errors are not signs of collapse. They are the cost of aggressive systems. What matters is the recovery and the persistence to continue forcing decisions. Alonso's Madrid has shown both. Off the ball, there's also an emotional alignment. When one player calls for a pass, The other anticipates rather than reacts. That level of rapport is rare because it requires both physical fitness and the mental space to think for one another. That can only come from consistent minutes, trust from the coach, and the absence of panic in the system. Madrid has provided each of those elements. Now, onto the bigger picture. What does this duo mean for titles, for trophies, for legacy? Teams are not built on two players, but they can be defined by them. If Mbappé and Güler sustain this arc, the timing, the fitness, the trust, they are not just a pair of season-long sensations. They can be the central spine of an era. Alonso is building more than attack patterns. He's building a language for the club to speak for years. If the architecture holds, and if the team's supporting pieces remain healthy and effective, Madrid can become less cyclical and more generational. But there are caveats. Injuries, managerial changes, fixture overload, and continental demands can fracture even the best systems. Mbappé's speed requires freshness. Güler's vision requires clarity. A single long-term injury to either would force Alonso to reframe strategies. Opponents will analyze, study, and attempt to shut down the link, perhaps by double marking or by altering their pressing triggers. The tactical arms race is real, but for now, Madrid possesses the blueprint and the personnel to execute it. Let's also not ignore the cultural moment. Pairings like Mbappé-Güler don't just win football matches. They create narratives that define clubs. They become the highlight reels, the tactical studies, and the emotional banners fans rally behind. They create that rare season when fans feel both entertained and assured. And that's a powerful, sustained currency in sports. So what's the short answer? Xabi Alonso has given two different players exactly what they needed: freedom scaffolded by discipline. He's allowed Mbappé to become a central, clinical predator. He's trusted Güler to be the mental engine. In doing so, he has created a duo that is not merely good. They are the mechanical heart of a team designed to win in multiple competitions. And this is where we stand, not at the end of a story, but at the hinge of a potentially historic arc. If the strikes keep coming, if the passes keep finding the seam, and if Madrid remains unafraid to let its stars operate inside a supportive structure, then this is more than a season's highlight. It is the beginning of an era. Now ask yourself, when you watch them link up on the pitch in the next game, are you watching chemistry or engineering? The answer matters, because if it's both, chemistry wrapped in engineering, then football is witnessing something that only appears a few times every generation.